Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm Peter Lavelle, of course, with George. George, I thought we'd have a short chat about polling because over the last few days we've seen a tightening of the race, at least according to the polls. And I think it should give us all pause because we saw Trump get a bit of a bump from the RNC. Biden didn't get any kind of bump because, well, the DNC doesn't have a pulse. But in reflecting about what the meaning of the polls, it seems to me that at least the left is falling back onto bad habits. Number one, we both know that most polls have inherent bias, okay? And it's so well known right now. We have this phenomenon of a shy Trump voter. Do you think that exists? Because I think it does.
Mm-hmm. I do, actually. I think people are reluctant to express their support for Trump, particularly when it's somebody on the phone. You really don't have no idea who it is who's calling you. For all you know, this is some Antifa character who's calling you. Now has your phone number, maybe has your address, and he's going to come around with a baseball bat. So I think there's a great reluctance on people's part to express their support for Trump. Also, with the telephone polling, you really have no idea, who picks up the phone. I mean, if it's a number you don't know, most people just don't pick up the phone. So therefore, there's always going to be the sample is going to be skewed to the sort of person who is actually willing to pick up the phone and who is willing to talk to strangers and express their political views to strangers. I don't think too many Trump supporters are willing to do that.
I think a lot of people misunderstand internal polling is. Both parties do internal polling. And internal polling, let's be honest, you employ a pollster basically to get the bad news, not the good news. What's the bad news? Because I don't need bells, whistles. I don't need how bad it is. That's what it's about, and you're paying them. And if you don't them, if the pollster doesn't come up with the goods, you're not going to be satisfied, and you're going to say these people aren't worth anything. They're going to be employed. Okay? It's a good pollster tells you the bad news. Okay, because I think what we saw at the during the convention, I think we saw panic. Okay, personally, all you can fall back on is demonizing the president. Well, everybody has an opinion on Trump. Why are you spending millions of dollars? Everybody that, okay? The internal polling in the Trump campaign in 2016 actually was pretty good, okay, compared to the public polls. Felt confident going in. The pollsters, maybe not a candidate, but the pollsters went into election, I feel, the reason. And so I think that, again, we have to step away and kind of parse the words when they say our internal polls. I think that's what you need to listen to.
Yes. The thing also is that in the United States, elections are decided in the contested states. It doesn't matter how many more votes you have in New York and California than Donald Trump, which is then reflected in the national polls with these ridiculous numbers, or Biden's 10 points ahead, whatever. You can only win California once. You can only win New York once. Everything depends on the battleground states. And if you look at the battleground states, it is extremely close. Some actually have Trump ahead, some have Biden ahead, but it's all within the margin of error. So in fact, the Democrats have problem on their hands in that they haven't been able to break away from Trump in the battleground states. And this is still September. And if it's in September, they're not able to take a decisive lead in the battleground states, then I think they have a real problem.
Some of I agree with you. Anyone that cites a national poll is basically a fool. Who cares? Who cares what a national poll has to say? It's meaningless because it's the Electoral College, at least at this time, that elects the president. Okay, that might change if the Democrats take all three branches. What's also interesting here is there are different parts of the electorate. We have African Americans and Hispanics, and I am always very curious about those numbers in these battleground states, as you point out, because there seems to be a meaningful shift in Trump's direction. And you know what? The kind of coalition the Democrats are attempting to build, it's a Clinton one and it lost. But anyway, I digress. You really, if you're not careful on the margins on different groups, it can flip the election. It'll destroy your strategy here. So I mean, if we get twice as many Hispanic men, which are maybe the quintessential bread and butter voter, because it's more about aspiration. How can I get better myself and my family? Okay, I mean, I lived in Southern California. I went to high school there. Hispanic families are very into their families. Okay, and I apologize to anyone if I'm making generalizations, but that was my personal experience. Also with African Americans here. I mean, the way Biden, it's the pandering is to the point of sickening. A black man didn't invent a light bulb. No, a black man didn't. It was Edison that did. Okay, sorry, that's just history. Okay, it doesn't mean that black Americans didn't play important roles in technology development. Apparently, a gentleman African American that worked for Edison improved upon his own invention, which should be applauded. Okay, but this pandering is insulting, and I think it's insulting to minorities.
I would have thought so. It's always been the case that presenting African Americans as permanently as victims, as the victims of racism, as the victims of systemic racism, as the victims of white America, I think it doesn't help them. I mean, the idea that, oh, this is all I really want to hear is that I'm a victim. I'm completely helpless in face of my circumstances. I can't do anything to alter my life because the weight of white racism is crushing me. Who wants to hear that? That's not an inspiring message. And I think there could well be sufficient number of minorities who will feel I need something more positive. I need a more uplifting message. Something to make me enthusiastic about my life and about living in this country. And just a few votes could be decisive. I mean, Democrats will win the overwhelming majority of the African American vote. But if Trump gets 10%, 12% of the African American, that'll be a terrific performance by him, and it could well hurt the Democrats in the battleground states.
You said, who wants to hear this message of victimization? White suburbanites want to hear it because it makes them feel good. Okay, it doesn't end systemic racism, but they can go have wine in the shower now because they feel good about themselves. Okay, and let's end up on these polls here. I date ourselves, but we can educate our viewers. Is that I remember very clearly the 1980 election where Reagan was supposed to be blown out. Remember?
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. And of course, Reagan won decisively in a three-way race against John Anderson, who was a liberal Republican, kind of establishment liberal Republican who was running in disgust at Reagan. So he won a three-way race. This has certainly happened regularly. That the polls have been wrong. And I think that they're often just too heavily skewed to, those who with the polls that find themselves in political agreement. You see this now. The polls are always heavily skewed towards the Democrats, far beyond what the national registration numbers are.
I guess the big question we're going to have to look at is how this mail-in strategy is going to play out. I voice my gross pessimism about it. I think it sows distrust. It sows enormous distrust, and we've said it here before, and we'll continue talking about it. I see the election night as basically a dumpster fire, personally, unless Biden just does like a FDR or Reagan's second term blowout. There's going to be a lot of rage in the country.
Yes, Yes, no question. I think there's going to be more rage among the Democrats. I mean, if they fail for a second time to defeat Trump, I think they will resort without question to violence. If it goes the other way, Trump supporters, I'm not sure to what extent the Trump supporters are ready to resort to violence. There may be, but so far, they've been more restrained with violence. But without question, with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, I mean, they will there will be blood in the streets if Trump wins.
So, which party believes in democracy? I'll leave that as a rhetorical question at this point. Thanks, George. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and like, share, and subscribe. And we got a whole lot more ahead this week. Stay with the gaggle.